Our base story is about the things that are happening right now, not only things that happened in the past, things that we actually living through right now. And when these moments appear, we need to give them careful attention without all the noise and the fuss and all the party shouting and all that sort of thing. But we need to understand them without all the emotion, because that's just distract from the actual situation. Our history is not just written in books, and it's not just written by those who are the victors. It is written by we, it is written in the laws, it is written in decisions that are made in Parliament. In 2026, Barbados just took a step that actually will shape the structure of our parliamentary democracy for generations to come. Parliament has now passed a constitutional amendment dealing with party defections, commonly referred to as the Anti-Defection Law. So right now we can take a step back and examine that moment carefully. As I said, without all the emotions, without all the politics. You hear what I tell you? Historically. I'm Zada Monique, and this is my channel, Bajans.net, and welcome to Let Me Call It Baj-Story, where today we can touch on the Constitution Amendment Bill of 2026, Baj-Story in the making. Welcome to all the one who here for the first time. If you see my face for the first time, thank you so much for being here. I am all about the Bajan culture, what happening in Bajan news, what happening in our Baj-Story, both past, now, and to come. And most importantly, you can get them in a Bajan dialect, you can get them in Bajan accent. And if you really want to learn how we speak and really want to understand it more, this is the place to be. Thank you all of one that have been here from the beginning and even from in between. Thank you for taking time out of your day to listen. I really do truly appreciate you. Now, let me call it Baj-Story. Now, to understand why this moment matters, we need to start long before now. Barbados actually operates under a parliamentary system rooted in the Westminster model, inherited from where? Britain. Under this system, citizens vote in constituencies. Each constituency elects one member of parliament. Political parties contest elections, and the party within majority forms the government. Now, here's an important constitutional detail. Technically, voters elect an individual member of parliament to represent their constituency. That individual may campaign under a party banner, the one that they draw to. But once elected, they sit in Parliament as a member of Parliament. Now listen to me again. The individual may campaign under a party banner, but once elected, they sit in Parliament as an MP. Now, this subtle distinction has always mattered because it raises a long-standing constitutional question. Does the mandate belong primarily to the party or the individual representative chosen by the voters? Stop and think for a minute. Let me know what you think. Let me carry on. For decades under the Westminster tradition, MPs could change party allegiance, often referred to as crossing the floor, without automatically losing their seat. That flexibility was historically part of parliamentary practice across many Commonwealth countries. But in Barbados, that tradition has now been formally altered. To understand why this law emerged, we must look at the political landscape of recent years. So let me come forward a little bit. Barbados experienced an unprecedented situation following the general elections of 2018 and again in 2022. In both elections, one political party secured every seat in the House of Assembly. Now, please remember, I am not going into the politics and all that sort of thing. I'm talking about the systems, what has happened and things like that. I'm always about the system. And the Baj-Story, primarily. Let me carry on. There was a 30-0 parliamentary result, and this created a constitutional environment where the lower house operated without an elected parliamentary opposition. Okay? All right. In Westminster systems, opposition is not simply decorative, it is actually part of the structure. Opposition parties play a formal role, questioning governmental decisions, scrutinizing legislations, representing alternative viewpoints in Parliament, actually playing out democracy. Without that balance, questions naturally arise about representation and the functioning of democratic debate. In the years that followed 2022, The issue of the members of parliament crossing the floor became central to discussion about how parliamentary opposition should exist in Barbados, most especially after this election. And that discussion eventually led into the introduction of a constitutional amendment. In 2026, the government introduced the Constitution Amendment Bill, commonly referred to as the Anti-Defection Bill. And the purpose of this legislation was to address situations where elected members of parliament leave the political party under which they were elected. Okay? Supporters of the bill argued that such moves could undermine the mandate given by the voters to political parties. On the other hand, critics argued that strict rules might weaken the independence of the individual MPs. Now, if we go back to what we said previously about how people run under a party, and then once they are elected, they are a member of parliament specifically, you can see how this complication had arisen. And are people even considering that this is something that came from long ago, something that was entrenched in the system, but possibly people in general, like the general public and things, did not even realize? They're kind of two different situations going on at the same time. Despite all the concerns and the objections raised during the debate, the bill proceeded through Parliament. The House of Assembly passed the legislation. It was debated in the Senate, where it also received approval. And with the passage in both chambers, the amendment cleared Parliament. It means that Barbados has now formally moved to change the constitutional rules governing party defections. Let me know what you think about that down in the comment section. Be respectful. Let me carry on. So what does this bill actually do? Under the new constitutional provisions, the elected members of parliament who resign from or expelled from or cross the floor away from the party under the party that they were elected must vacate their seat. So in practical terms, this means that if an MP breaks their party, the seat does not simply remain with the individual. Instead, the constituency must return to the polls through a by-election. The logic behind the Constitutional Amendment Bill of 2026 is straightforward. Supporters argue that voters choose not only a person, but their party affiliation, the party platform. If that political alignment changes, what they've argued is that the electorate should have the opportunity to decide again. In other words, the seat returns to the people. Understand? Good. Supporters of the Anti-Defection Bill says it strengthens democratic accountability. Their arguments include protecting the mandate voters give to political parties, preventing opportunistic shifts in political allegiance, maintaining stability in parliamentary governance, ensuring that significant political changes require fresh approval from constituents. This perspective requiring a by-election is simply returning the decision back to the electorate, back to people like you and me, for instance. However, not everyone agrees with this approach. During parliamentary debate and public discussion, concerns were raised that the provisions introduced by the Constitution Amendment Bill of 2026 could have unintended consequences. Critics argue that such laws might limit the independence of members of parliament, increase the power of the party leadership over individual representatives, discourage dissent within political parties, reduce the flexibility that traditionally exists in Westminster systems. Observers warned that strong anti-defection rules may transform MPs from independent representatives of their constituents into extensions of party control. Sit and think about that for a minute. Legislation addressing party defections is not unique to Barbados, by the way. Okay, countries such as India have implemented strict rules that disqualify legislators who change party allegiance. Those laws were introduced to prevent political instability and opportunistic allegiances, but they also have generated an ongoing debate about the balance between party discipline and individual parliamentary independence. Other Commonwealth nations have taken more flexible approaches, right? Allowing voters themselves to judge floor-crossing behavior in the next general election. By adopting constitutional provisions requiring by-elections in cases of party defection, Barbados has now chosen a more formal approach to regulating this issue. And this is where the Baj-Story becomes more important, right? Because our history is not just about the distant past, as I said. It is about the decisions that shape Barbados today. Centuries ago, laws passed in Barbados shaped land ownership, labor systems, political power, did not involve people like you and me. These decisions became chapters in our national history. Today, constitutional amendments like this one are shaping how our parliamentary democracy will function in the future. Different era, different issues, different people. Still is our history. And if we're serious about documenting our Baj-Story, seriously, we cannot only examine what happened long time ago. We must also observe carefully the choices being made today. It shows what is in the focus and what is important to those who make these important decisions. These debates potentially become tomorrow's history. One thing that I would like to throw in here, however, is timeliness. At what kind of time should we be talking about things like this? Do you think that the timeliness of the passing of this bill is important? Do you think that matters? Or doesn't it? The passage of the Constitution Amendment Bill of 2026 represents a structural change in Barbados' constitutional framework. Whether anyone agrees with this bill or not, it is a moment that needs some kind of understanding, because democracy is not just about the elections, it is about the rules that govern how power operates, between these elections. And those rules would actually evolve in time and change how we do things. This amendment is just a step in that total evolution. So, as we Bajans continue to discuss this development, not only in Parliament, but also in legal circles and in everyday conversation, we should remember something very important. This: we are not just witnessing politics. We are witnessing our Baj-Story in the making.